There's a question about depression and medication.
Dear Thai, we had a few friends who wrote to Thai after Thai spoke about depression and how nothing can survive without food. And they wrote either from their own experience or their experience of a loved one or a client if they wrote as a psychotherapist. And their experience that sometimes there's also a physiological aspect causing depression, and that some of these people truly need to take some kind of medication. And the friends who wrote were concerned that Thai's teaching could be misunderstood by the people who may still need to have medicine, and they may stop taking their medicine because they may misunderstand what Thai said to say that there's no medicine that's needed because they only need to stop consuming things that are harmful to their mind, and then that's enough. So they asked Thai to clarify.
In the teaching of the Buddha, the biological and the mental, they interact. They manifest based on each other. Our emotions, our feelings are very connected to the chemicals in our body. And our feeling, our emotion can produce chemicals that will be toxic to ourselves. And the inhibition and these feelings and emotions can inhibit the production of a certain chemicals, the neurotransmitter, for instance, and that create an imbalance in your body. So the mental can create the biological, and the biological can have an effect on the mental. So things rely on each other to manifest. We don't reduce the importance of one side. All of us have the seed of depression. All of us. All of us have the seed of mental illness. But if we are in a good environment, these seeds will have not much chance to manifest. We have received the genes from our ancestors, our parents. And we know by science that the genes, they don't turn on by themselves. They are turned on by our way of thinking, our feelings, our perceptions, and our environment. It is the environment that helps turn on the genes in ourselves, the good and the negative genes. And the genes are equivalent to the bijas, the seeds that we speak about in the teaching of the Buddha. They might be the same. They might not describe it as only mental or only physiological. These two aspects belong to the same reality. Neuroscientists used to ask the question about the difference between the brain and the mind. Is it true that the brain produces the mind? is the mind is a product of the brain. How should the activities of neurons bring about the subjective mind? These are questions. But in fact, mind and brain, they interact. This is because that is, this is not because that is not. It's like a body and mind. It's not the body produces the mind, or the mind produces the body, but mind and body are two aspects of the same thing, and they always rely on each other in order to manifest. It's like a coin, a piece of €1. There is the head and the tail, and without the head, the tail cannot be, and vice versa. So mind, body are not two distinct entities. They are aspects of the same thing. And the seed of depression that now manifests may have been transmitted to us by many generations of ancestors. There may have been generations when that seed did not manifest. But now, because of the new environment, that seed has a chance to manifest. And that is why we have to take into account the element of environment. And environment is the object of consumption. Because elements of the environment touch off and turn on the seeds, turn on the genes in us. And that is why the teaching of the Buddha about food is very important. We consume not only the edible food, but we consume also with what we hear, we see, we feel, we touch, and so on. Sensory impressions, sensory impressions is the second kind of food. And the third kind of food is intention, our evolution, the kind of deep desire in us. And the fourth kind of nutriment is consciousness. We consume consciousness. If we live with a number of people around us, we consume their way, the collective way of thinking, of perceiving. And in the beginning, we don't see that as beautiful, but because all of people around us think that is beautiful, and then slowly we come to see it as beautiful also. So we are influenced by the collective thinking around us, and that is also consumption. And our depression has to do with all these sources of nutriments of food. And we know that if there is an imbalance within our mind and our body, there may be some disorder in our mind, in our body. And we know that chemicals have to do with our feelings and emotions. Our emotions and feelings have connection, have to do with the chemicals also. If we used to think, to worry, to to perceive in such a way, and then our body can continue to produce or even overproduce such chemicals that will bring disorder to ourself, to our body and mind. Or if we think and do and consume in such a way, we may inhibit the production of such chemicals that are essential to our balance. So both aspects are important, and we have to take care of both. Medication may help, but if you count only on medication, you are wrong. And doctors and psychotherapists, they know that. Medication can help, and you need medication, but don't rely on medication alone. You have to change your way of life. You have to change your environment, and one day you'll be able to stop taking medication. If you don't change your way of life, if you don't change your sources of impression, you continue to use medications, and sometime later they will not work because your body will get used to it. So those of us who are prescribing a medication, so those of us who are using medication should be aware that medication can help, but they are not enough. We have received the seeds, we have received the genes from our parents, our ancestors, and we should learn the way to handle these genes, these seeds. Don't give them a chance to turn on if they are negative seeds. And scientists of our time know very well that it is the environment, that it is our attention that turn on the genes and the seeds in us. There is a practice called Yoniso Manaskara, appropriate attention. We focus our attention only on things that will turn on the good things in us. Like when we hear the sound of the bell, naturally, as we are a practitioner, naturally we stop thinking, we go back to our breathing, and we enjoy the present moment. And the sound of the bell help with appropriate attention. They bring out, they turn on the good things. And we should create an environment where the good seeds, the good genes in us have many chances to turn on. As you are in a bad environment, you know that even if you are taking medication, that will not be a solution, a long-term solution. So go on and take the medication that you need, but you should do something more. Change your way of life. Look at the source of nutriment you are using to feed yourself. Look at your environment to see whether that environment is always turning on the negative things in you. And if possible, you just change the environment. Even if you need to live in a smaller house, to use a smaller car, to have a meager salary, but if you can move to a better environment, don't hesitate to do so, because your health depends on that wise decision.
What is the purpose of the life, but not in this life? On the galaxy, why we are? Why exists the life?
That is a philosophy.
No, it's why we are here. Must be one reason.
This is a chance to discover the mystery of life. Very exciting. You have something to discover. You have something to discover, something very deep, something very wonderful to discover. And that practice of looking deeply can satisfy your curiosity. That is one reason to live, to be alive, to discover yourself, discover the cosmos. And this is a joy that is a chance. And you might like to focus your question on how, and not to be caught always in the why. How? Life is a wonder. Life is a wonder. And we are there to experience the wonder of life. And if we have enough mindfulness, concentration, and then we can get a breakthrough and get deep into the fact, the reality of the wonder. Life is a wonderful manifestation. Not only the rose is wonderful, the cloud, the sky is wonderful, but the mud and the suffering is also wonderful. So enjoy touching life, enjoy, discover the mystery of life, and don't spend your time asking metaphysical questions.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Armin. I'm from America, New York / Massachusetts. So many intense emotions, even here. As a young person in the crowd and in the world, I was wondering how to use my practice, but also in a way that can be spoken and understood in a kind of a language for other younger people, because you're sharing a very important ancient teaching that has very good practicality in the 21st century. And I guess, what would you consider to be a creative language to use? I guess with yourself, but also with other younger people, because I imagine when you do these talks, you change your wording for a different age group, obviously. So, I said my question.
As we look around, we see people suffer. Not only the adults suffer, but the young people suffer. And suffering is a reality. That is the first noble truth. And the Buddha did begin with that remark that there is suffering, there is ill-being in society. And everyone aspires to suffer less and to help other people suffer less. And that is in everyone. When you have a strong emotion, you are not very peaceful and you may suffer, and you would like to learn how to handle your emotion in order for you to be more peaceful, to suffer less, and to be okay, to be happy. So we can use several kinds of languages in order to communicate that, because we have things in common. We all suffer, and we all aspire to suffer less. We aspire to experience the joy and the freedom. It's very important that we practice mindful breathing, mindful walking, mindfulness of cooking, of toothbrushing, so that we can experience the joy of living in the present moment. It's very important to learn how to handle feelings and emotions, so we will not be victims of these emotions and feelings, overwhelmed by them. And then based on that quality of life, we can talk to other young people. The foundation is we have some well-being in us. We have some joy, some compassion, happiness in us. And then we naturally find the kind of language in order to share. When you see a young person suffers, you know that you have gone through that suffering, and you are motivated by the desire to help that person to overcome his suffering. So you might invent many skillful means in order to help him or her. And when you are able to help a person to suffer less, to get free, and then you are nourished by that joy. And your life has a meaning. And you are somehow a continuation of Lord Buddha. Because Lord Buddha was a young person when he started his spiritual career. And after full enlightenment, he continued to help people, young or less young. And he did not stop until the moment when he died. And he took a great deal of joy helping people, because his life has a meaning. And his view is so simple. There is suffering, and there is a way out of suffering. So people suffer in their family, people suffer in their school, people suffer in their workplace. And if you have a practice that helps you not to suffer, and then it's a joy to share. And if you are in a group of people who have the same kind of practice, who have same kind of joy, of aspiration, and then you grow stronger, and your work in the world will be more effective. So sangha building is very important. Form a group of young people, practice the 5 mindfulness trainings very well, get the joy and the compassion, and then you will be able to help so many people. And the language, that will come naturally. You know what kind of language you should use in order to help. The way I teach Buddhism, the language I use to teach Buddhism is already very different from the former generation. So for your generation, the language may change further. And we need the kind of language that can make people understand the practice. And that language should not be overloaded by technical terms. Okay. Thank you.
Dear Jai,
Hello.
my question is, how do we forgive someone who we have never known intimately and whom we have no way of communicating for the suffering that they have caused in us?
The first step is to help ourselves. In order for us to have enough calm and compassion and intention to help the other person. Without that, we cannot do anything. Without that, we cannot forgive. When we understand our own suffering, when we are able to hold, embrace our own suffering, when we are able to cultivate our understanding and compassion, and then we are in a position to forgive and to help. And looking into us, we can see the other person. And looking into the other person, we can see in us. We can see deeply in us also. Because that person and ourselves, we may share many things in common. That person might not have received love in their childhood. That person might not know how to love, how to make the happiness of himself, herself. And that is why that person does not know how to make the happiness of another person. In fact, he or she has done harm to other people around. When you suffer and you don't know how to handle your suffering, you are a victim of your own suffering and you make people around you suffer. That's very natural. And when you see a person like that, and you can have compassion on him or her, and you don't blame him anymore, you don't blame her anymore. You say that this person is unfortunate. From his childhood until now, no one has helped him. No one has helped water the seed of understanding and compassion in him. He suffered and he did not know how to handle his suffering. He's a victim of his own suffering, and he makes other people around suffer because of his impulses, because of his craving and so on. So when you can see a person in that way, compassionate, understanding, you see that he or she is a victim. You don't want to blame anymore. You don't want to punish anymore. In fact, you are motivated by a desire to help such a person. And you become a bodhisattva instead of harboring anger, resentment, hate. You want to help that person to get out of his or her situation. And looking deeply, understanding suffering, making a bodhisattva vow to help. All these elements help us to forgive easily the other person. And there are many people like that in the world, making people around suffer, abusing people, destroying the life of people. And if we are a bodhisattva with a great vow, we can help these people. Locking them into prisons is not enough. Punishing them may not help them. And therefore, we should embrace the compassionate way in order to be able to transform them. And transform them is to help society. Sometimes we have to lock them up in a prison because we want to protect other people. But we should lock him or her in prison out of compassion and transform the prison into an environment where he can change. And that is why it's very important to train prison guards into bodhisattvas so that they can take good care of the prisoners and help the prisoners to change their way of thinking and looking. And that is love as a prison guard. You can be a good practitioner. And when you are compassionate, when you are able to look at the prisoner with compassion, you can see the change in the person of the prisoner. You change yourself first, and you help change the other person after. And many prisoners, many people who have done wrong in the past, now are able to practice understanding and compassion. And they turn the prison into a practice center where they got transformation and healing. And many of our practitioners are helping these people in prison in many ways.
Dear Thai, dear Sangha, before I came to Vietnam, I had the privilege to spend several weeks in Laos, where I was able to meet with many people who have been affected by the war. As I stood in fields, some about this size, which still had a lot of unexploded ammunition, sometimes 40 or 50 bombs, I felt overwhelmed with sadness, and there was some anger. Speaking to people who continue to be affected, whether it's friends or family who are killed by the unexploded ammunition that exists, or to a poor farmer who's had his leg and arm blown off at a young age, plunging his family into further poverty. I felt very sad. This young farmer said to me that this experience was his luck. I find it hard to accept that such experiences can be luck. Is this karma? And is this a time when we can be righteously angry? What is the mindful way to deal with the intense emotions?
Many social workers we train in the School of Youth for Social Service have died because of bombs and guns, because of assassination. And many of them have lost one foot, one arm. This young lady who got more than 300 of metals in her body. That is from a bomb called anti-personnel bomb, dropped by the American bombers. The doctors helped to extract, to take out many pieces of metals in her body, but there are still hundreds of them in her body. So many, and they leave them like that in her body. And still, she's still alive, and she still carries these hundreds of pieces of metals in her body. And when she was in Japan for treatment, she could not use an electric blanket because of these small pieces of metal in herself. And they are my own disciples and students. I know that many unexploded mines and bombs are still there in Vietnam, in Laos, and that continue to kill people. And we need to draw the attention of people in the world and ask them to help removing these bombs, these engines of death that are still there in the landmines. And that those dedicated people, professionals who are helping. So the essential is to learn how to do it with compassion, because that amount of violence, lack of consideration are part of our legacy, our heritage. And we should take the strong vow, the strong aspiration not to repeat that kind of action from now on. But the bombs are not only in the land, they are in the heart of many people now. If you look around, you see that many people, even very young people, are carrying a bomb in their heart. They are ready to die, to punish. And how you can diffuse the bomb in the heart of man is a very important work also. How to remove the hate in the heart of so many people. So far, the war against terrorism has not diminished the number of terrorists. In fact, they have increased the number of terrorists. And each of them has a bomb within his or her heart. They are ready to die, and they think that they will die for a good cause. They want to punish. And that is why cultivating compassion, helping these people to remove their hate, their anger, is also a very important work. That is also to diffuse the bombs. And the bomb that we need to diffuse are not only buried in the land, but they are actually alive in the heart of so many people. Looking in the direction of the Middle East, you see the situation is very hard, because not only there are bombs exposed on the land, but also the bombs in the heart of many people. Only compassion is the answer to the situation. So while helping to diffuse the bombs, whether it is in the land or in the heart, we should keep our compassion alive. To stay sane, to stay alive. And I admire those of us who continue to help removing these death engines in the soil. But I also urge my friends to practice in order to help diffuse the bomb in the heart of many people who actually are there around us. We pray the Buddha, we pray Jesus Christ, all our spiritual ancestors who support us in this compassionate action. We should think of our children and their children. And we should clean the earth. We should clean our heart so that our children will have a better place to live. Thank you for reflecting on this.